The sirens wailed through the cold concrete halls of ADX Florence, America's most secure prison. Guards ran in every direction, shouting orders into their radios, boots pounding against metal floors. Somewhere deep inside the maze of steel doors and motion sensors, a cell stood wide open. The prisoner who was never supposed to see daylight again was gone. "Cell 117 is empty," a guard screamed into his radio, panic breaking through his voice. "Repeat, inmate Mason Turner is not in his cell." Mason Turner, the most dangerous man ever locked inside ADX Florence. Convicted of multiple murders, armed robberies, and even attempting to assassinate a federal agent, Mason was the kind of prisoner no one dared to talk to. He was kept in total isolation for 23 hours a day. No visitors. No contact. No mistakes allowed. Yet somehow, the impossible had just happened. The cameras showed him in his cell at 8:59 p.m., sitting calmly on his bed, staring at the wall. By 9:01 p.m., he was gone. The warden stood in front of the monitor, her eyes wide. "That's not possible," she whispered. "There's no way out." But Mason had been planning this for years. And tonight, his secret plan had finally begun. The alarm echoed through every part of the prison. Floodlights cut through the dark Colorado sky as helicopters hovered above, scanning the perimeter. But Mason wasn't anywhere outside. He was still inside ADX Florence, hiding, watching the chaos he'd created. The guards searched every cell, every hallway, and every vent. But Mason had built his plan around one thing everyone at ADX believed was impossible: escaping without ever leaving the prison. As a team of heavily armed officers entered the lower maintenance tunnels, one of them noticed a small hatch left slightly open. He moved closer, flashlight shaking in his hand. He called for backup, but before anyone arrived, a faint whisper came from the darkness below. "Too late," the voice said. The officer froze. The whisper came again, this time closer. "By the time you find me, it'll already be done." And then, silence. The story of Mason Turner's secret plan began years before this night, back when he first arrived at ADX Florence. It was 2013, and Mason was escorted through the towering gates, shackled from his wrists to his ankles. He didn't fight or speak. He only looked up at the walls that reached into the sky and smiled. "This is where they send you to disappear," one of the guards said. "You'll never see daylight again." Mason's voice was calm. "We'll see about that." He was led through layers of steel doors, each closing behind him with a heavy echo. The walls were gray, the air cold, and the silence unbearable. Mason's cell was nothing more than a concrete box with a single slit of a window no wider than his finger. But for him, that box became a workshop. Mason wasn't just another criminal. Before his crimes, he had been a systems engineer, a man who understood how things worked, from electrical circuits to surveillance networks. While other inmates screamed and cursed at the walls, Mason studied them. He listened to the humming of the air vents, the timing of guard rotations, and the flicker of cameras turning on and off. Every sound, every pattern, he memorized it. His only human contact came through the metal food slot, where a guard would slide in his tray. Mason noticed something one day, a tiny delay in how the slot opened and closed. He realized that the control system for the cell doors had a millisecond delay, not much, but enough to exploit. Over the next year, Mason began testing small things, slipping thin metal pieces into the slot, watching how sensors responded. He wasn't rushing. He knew he had time. The guards thought he was broken, quiet, obedient, emotionless. But in his mind, he was building something bigger than any crime he had ever committed. Mason had once told another inmate, "There's always a way out. You just have to stop thinking like a prisoner." That inmate, years later, would tell the FBI those same words during an interrogation. As months turned into years, Mason managed to get access to cleaning supplies once a week under heavy watch. It was during one of those cleaning sessions that he noticed a flaw in the system, a small, nearly invisible space between two panels near the floor drain. It connected to a maintenance shaft used only once a year for inspection. That was all he needed. Mason began hiding tiny pieces of metal, screws, and wires he found from the vents, keeping them hidden inside the hollow of his bed frame. He built tools from scraps, and nobody noticed, because nobody thought anyone could ever escape from ADX Florence. He worked silently, night after night, creating something that even the smartest guards couldn't detect, a device that could short-circuit the door control from the inside. One night, during a thunderstorm, he tested it for the first time. The lights flickered, and for a moment, his cell door clicked. It didn't open completely, But it was enough to prove one thing: his plan could work. But the risk was massive. If caught, he would be placed under permanent surveillance, no chance of trying again. So he waited for the perfect moment, the one night when the entire system would be distracted. That night came 3 years later, during a full prison lockdown caused by a riot in another block. Every camera, every guard, every alarm was focused elsewhere. Mason sat quietly in his cell, heart pounding. He connected the final wire, took a deep breath, and flipped the switch. The door clicked, then opened. He stepped out, silent as a shadow, moving through the dim corridors he had memorized in his mind for years. He knew exactly where the cameras turned, when the sensors blinked off, and where to hide between patrols. He reached the maintenance shaft, the same narrow passage he'd discovered years before. It led to the lower level of the prison, an area used only by engineers. He climbed inside, heart racing, body trembling from adrenaline. For the first time in 10 years, Mason wasn't in a cell. He was free, at least for now. But just as he started crawling through the shaft, his radio earpiece, stolen months earlier from a careless maintenance worker, crackled to life. A voice came through. "We know, Mason. We've been watching you." His breath caught in his throat. He froze. The voice continued. "You think you're the only one with a plan." Mason turned toward the sound of approaching boots above him. His escape was no longer a secret. Someone, maybe even one of the guards, had been part of his plan all along. The vent rattled as footsteps grew louder. Mason realized it was too late to go back. He could only move forward. He crawled deeper into the darkness as the alarm began to scream again. But this time, not because of him escaping, but because something far worse had just started inside the prison. The sound of the alarm echoed through the walls of ADX Florence like a heartbeat, loud, steady, and terrifying. Guards shouted into their radios, trying to make sense of what was happening. Mason Turner was still missing, but now there was something else, something no one expected. The power had gone out. The entire prison was plunged into darkness for 27 seconds before the backup generators kicked in. But in those 27 seconds, 3 more cells opened on their own. No one could explain how. The warden, drenched in sweat, stared at the monitors as they flickered back to life. "Lock down every level," she ordered. "I want eyes on every inmate." But it was already too late. The screen for Sector D, Mason's block, showed nothing but static. Deep below, inside the maintenance tunnel, Mason's flashlight beam cut through the narrow path. The air was heavy with dust, and his knees scraped against the metal floor as he crawled forward. He could hear the chaos above, shouting, boots, doors slamming. But Mason wasn't smiling anymore. The voice in the radio had shaken him. "We know, Mason. We've been watching you." That meant only one thing. Someone had been feeding him information, and that same person had just betrayed him. He turned off the flashlight and listened. For a moment, all he could hear was his own breathing. Then, faint footsteps echoed from behind him. "Who's there?" he whispered. No answer. He started moving faster, ignoring the pain in his hands and knees. He needed to reach the end of the tunnel, a small hatch that connected to the service corridor near the generator room. If he could make it there, he could disappear into the maze of electrical systems that powered the prison. But the footsteps behind him grew louder. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his ankle. Mason kicked hard, twisting in the narrow tunnel. A face appeared in the glow of a faint light, another inmate. His eyes wild, his smile wide. "You didn't think you were the only one planning something, did you?" the man hissed. Mason's heart dropped. "Who are you?" The man grinned. "You can call me Cole. We've never met, but I've been listening to your little experiments for years." Mason realized what that meant. The air vents, the same vents he used to map the sounds of the prison, had also been carrying his voice. Cole had heard everything. "I helped you without you even knowing," Cole said. "But now, we're finishing this together." Mason tried to crawl past him, but Cole blocked his way. "Move," Mason said through clenched teeth. Cole laughed. "Oh, you don't get it. The guards aren't chasing you, Mason. They are chasing us." "What are you talking about?" "The power outage, that wasn't you. That was me." Mason froze. Cole's grin widened. "While you were playing with wires, I was making connections. Guards, electricians, even a cook. Everyone wants something. Mason, you just have to know what to trade. You caused this." Cole nodded. "And now, the entire prison system is resetting. Every door, every camera, it's all cycling for 2 minutes. That's our window. We can either make it out together, or die in here. Mason hesitated. He didn't trust Cole, but he also knew that time was running out. The sound of boots above them grew louder. Fine, Mason said. Lead the way. Cole crawled forward, humming softly, as if none of it scared him. The tunnel ended at a small grate. Cole pulled it open, revealing a dark hallway filled with humming generators. This is it, Cole whispered. The heartbeat of ADX Florence. They dropped down into the corridor, landing hard on the metal floor. Steam hissed from the pipes. The lights above flickered red, and warning sirens blared. Through that door, Cole said, pointing to a heavy steel entrance marked authorized personnel only. Mason grabbed a screwdriver from his pocket, one of the few tools he had smuggled from his cell, and began working on the panel. The lock clicked. They pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was massive. Rows of monitors, switches, and security terminals filled the space. This was the control hub that managed the lower levels. If Mason could reach the main server, he could disable motion sensors and open certain security doors without triggering alarms. He turned to Cole. We do this quietly. Cole nodded, but Mason could see the glint in his eyes. Something about him was off. While Mason worked on the system, Cole wandered around, picking up a discarded guard's ID badge. You know, Cole said, people like us don't belong in cages. We build them. We break them. Focus, Mason snapped. Relax, Cole said with a smirk. You're not the only genius here. Then he reached over Mason's shoulder and pressed a button. The alarms went silent. Mason froze. What did you do? Cole smiled. I opened every door on this level. Within seconds, chaos erupted again. Distant screams, shouts, and the metallic slam of doors bursting open echoed through the concrete halls. You just freed half the block. Mason shouted. Cole shrugged. Distractions make good cover. Mason's blood ran cold. You're insane. Cole grinned wider. Maybe. But you're the one who built the map. Before Mason could respond, a voice came over the intercom, calm, firm, and too familiar. Mason Turner. Cole Everett. This is Warden Harris. Whatever you think you're doing, it's over. We've sealed the exits. You're trapped. Mason looked at Cole. You said there was a way out. Cole's grin didn't fade. Oh, there is. But it's not through any door they know about. He turned toward a massive vent near the corner of the room, one Mason hadn't noticed before. Cole pulled away a loose panel, revealing a deep vertical shaft. This leads to the outside walls, Cole said. They use it to circulate air from the surface tunnels. You've been down there? Mason asked. Cole nodded. Once. Got caught. But now I've got you to finish the job. Mason hesitated. He could already hear guards pounding toward the room. The lights above flashed red again. Move. Cole shouted. They both climbed into the shaft, gripping the cold metal edges as they descended. The deeper they went, the darker it got, until the only light was from the red emergency glow far above them. Then Mason heard it, the faint hum of a large fan below. The main ventilation fan. If they didn't stop it, it would slice them both to pieces. Cole, we can't. But Cole had already leaped down. The sound that followed was horrifying, a metallic crash, sparks, and a scream that echoed through the shaft. Mason froze, gripping the wall. Cole. No answer. Just silence. Then, a faint clang. Mason looked down, and saw something impossible. Cole was standing on a narrow beam just above the spinning fan, smiling up at him. Come on, Mason, he shouted over the noise. We're almost there. Mason's heart pounded. He took a deep breath and climbed down carefully. The air was thick and hot from the machines. He could see daylight flickering through the lower vents. Freedom was inches away. But just as he reached for the final rung, the fan blades began to speed up again. Someone had turned the power back on. Cole screamed, "Jump now." Mason hesitated. One wrong move, and he'd be shredded. But staying meant capture. He took one last breath, and jumped.